Welcome to the Steve Meyer Show on capitalism and politics. The opinions expressed are those of the host and his guests and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the staff, management, or sponsors of News Radio 1490 WTTB. Now, here's Steve Meyer.
Thanks for joining me this Labor Day Saturday. Know people have plenty of things to do, so I appreciate you tuning in. Producing the show is Jesse Krisky, and to contact me or to download past shows, please go to the WTTBAM.com website, and please let others know about the show. Well, I'm lucky enough to have Joseph Semprevivo. I messed it up here. Pardon me, Joseph. Do you want to get your name right? I'm going to have trouble with it all day, so I'm just going to call you Joseph.
Just call me Joseph. It's Joseph Semprevivo.
Semprevivo.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have trouble with that. Every Italian name, that's Italian, right? I don't know why. It's just I didn't grow up with Italians. There's a bunch of bohunks and Polish people. I just have a tough time, and I apologize for that. But if you're around town, I think most of you know Joseph. Joseph's Light Cookies. I heard you on a number of radio shows, one yesterday morning. I think you do a nice job, and I appreciate you being in here. Also pretty active in Republican things. And I think you have an interesting background. Wrote the book Madness, Miracles, and Millions, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but I read about 2 books a year. I don't read very many. So I handed it off to my wife, and it took her, she reads about 3 books a week, and she's always backed up by about 10 books. So it took her a while, and I said, well, what did you think of that book? And she said, I loved it. So any comments on your book? I think it was a great little book. It really tells a great American story, I think.
Well, thank you. It's a memoir, a motivational, inspirational memoir that my mom and dad and I worked together on creating. And the whole reason, like as you mentioned, I make sugar-free cookies, and I've been doing this for 26 years now. With the book, my mom said to us, she walked into my office one day and with my dad and said, we lost everything we had in the 1980s. We went bankrupt, and we had health problems. We lost our home, car, everything else. We had to pick up and move to a small town, and Dad had to become a cook. I had to become a waitress, and we were just struggling. My mom skipped meals while going through all these hard times, and my dad skipped meals so we could eat. And she said, you know how many Americans are going through this right this minute, and they feel alone? When we lost everything, nobody came to our side. Nobody came to our aid. No, it's like we had the plague. And we need to share this story with other people going through the same thing, whether it's health or marriage or finance or job related. They need to know that they're not alone, that we've been through it too, and there's other Americans that have been through it. You need to write a book. And that's what we started to do. We wrote a book and had it published. No,
I thought it was a great book. And are you still pushing that? Pretty much. I mean, I know you're pushing hard here. I know you're going to go to, or at least I've heard that you're going to head out to our big program we're having out at the Indian River Fairgrounds here on the 26th. Will you have books there? Are you going to be there?
Yes, I will be there, and we'll have books there. Also on September 12th at 3:50 p.m. in Jensen Beach, we have a book signing, and my dad and I will be giving a speech and doing a book signing there.
And where's that going to be?
That's at Barnes & Noble in Jensen Beach on US 1.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to plug our All-American Rally, Saturday, September 26th, so you'll have books there too then. And I would recommend people get it. I mean, I just think it's a great American story, and it's a pretty quick read. I really liked it, but like I say, I don't read very many books. My wife read it and loved it, and so I don't know. I think it's great. I heard you also just kind of mention you might have a movie in the works and all kinds of things.
Yeah, we have a couple options on that. We're dealing with a movie producer who's done 70 movies. He was handed the book by somebody and fell in at an airport and read it, fell in love with it, read it again. It's only a 140-page read, and he called me up. He got my cell phone somehow, called me up and said, by the way, I want to do a movie with you. This is Madness, Miracles, Millions is fantastic. And at that time, we were the #1 bestseller, Barnes & Noble. And he said, I see that your book is selling. I see you have 5 stars and Goodreads, 5-star rating and everything else. You've won, 8 to 10 awards. I'm really interested in doing a movie. So we should be finding out in October if the studio that he talked to picked up the movie, and so we'll know more. We'll know more then.
And I'm still, I heard you talk, and I read your book, and I'm still trying to figure out who's really the brains behind this whole outfit, if it's you or your dad or your mom, or if it's a combination. You have all this energy going together. Any comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Behind every strong man is a stronger woman. So my mom is absolutely brilliant. My dad is absolutely brilliant. So I give all my credit to my parents. They're really the brains and the driving force. They've been retired for almost 20 years now, 18 years, but they're my driving force. They're really brilliant people.
Yeah, good. No, I thought the whole thing. And then I think it was also interesting your background, and I didn't know all this stuff, but things just kind of keep rolling in. And you kind of made the introduction speech for Babe Buchanan at the annual Lincoln Day dinner here, and you worked actually in, is it the Reagan Library then? Is that where you were?
I did. I actually worked when I was, this was post-presidency. I was like 25, 26 years old. I worked at Reagan's personal office in Century City, California. And I also worked at the library, at the foundation, not the actual physical library, but the foundation. So I worked with Mrs. Reagan at the foundation doing book signings. She would work her little heart out. She would stay 12 to 15 hours to sign every book for every person to the last person left. And all the staff was leaving, lights were going out. She would stay there. She would sit there all day and sign. So I worked for her, and I worked personally for President Reagan, post-presidency, though.
Yeah, and I think like probably most Republicans of our age group, I guess I'm half a generation older than you, but I have a high regard for Reagan. But I always kind of wonder about Nancy Reagan, but so she was a workhorse.
Oh, yeah, she not only was a workhorse, but you know, in the media, we go back in the in that time to that time period, and you hear that she was controlling and protective of the president, and the latter is very true. She was very protective of Ronnie, of the president, but she has a heart of gold. One day after, just to share this little brief thing with you, one day after a book signing, we were there probably 15 hours. Mrs. Reagan never once got up to take a break. She sat there all day long and signed. Never went to the restroom, nothing. And I stood next to her that whole day, handing her the books from customers that were standing in line. Well, what happened was at the end of the night, we went upstairs, and they have like a mock Oval Office upstairs in the foundation office. Mrs. Reagan was there, and she got the sandwich. She split it in half, and she started eating it. And she turned to me, and she goes, Joseph, all day long you stood by my side. I want you to have half of this. And I said, oh no, Mrs. Reagan, I'm not going to steal your food. She said, no, listen, you stood next to me all day. You never took a break. I said, ma'am, you didn't take a break either. She goes, it's my job to have the president's legacy live. This is what I do, and I love doing it and love meeting his supporters. And she goes, and I said, Mrs. Reagan, I'm not going to take your food. She goes, are you turning down the first lady? And she handed me her tuna sandwich and shared the half a sandwich with me. And so I stood with her and I ate the sandwich, but just a loving, sweet lady.
Yeah, that's good to know. I don't know. I just thought the world of the Reagans, and still do.
Yes, me too.
We're trying to come back, but I have to tell people. And Joseph and I sat down. I had to made him sit through my presentation for 45 minutes or something. So right now I have this concern that if it was even Ronald Reagan running, he'd have a very tough time winning these days, just because I think the nation's changed so much. And any thoughts on that, or you think you'd still come out winning? Like California, I don't think Ronald Reagan could carry California anymore. I mean, I just think it's so fundamentally changed.
Well, I mean, going back in time, we have to remember, Reagan did lose. I mean, he was with Barry Goldwater's campaign, and they lost. And then he ran in the primary and lost. And he was not beloved by any means. He was not loved by the Republican Party when he ran. He was pretty much despised in the beginning. And he did win. And he changed American hearts, and he will go down as a top 5 presidents of America's history. I mean, from our founding fathers to current day. I think you gave your 45-minute presentation regarding the direction of America and what needs to be done, and really you quantified it. It was a fantastic presentation, very thoughtful presentation. If the candidate is the vehicle of the message, and this is all behind everything that you're saying, it is really important to have a fantastic message. And we need a message that resonates with the voters. We lost that in 2008, 12, and hopefully now that's not the case. But 2008 and 2012, we lost the message. We put two moderates in that forgot what the Constitution was, forgot what the Bill of Rights were, forgot what the Declaration of Independence was all about. Reagan loved those documents. Reagan carried it not only in his pocket, but he read it every single night. When I worked with him, he still read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So it's the Bill of Rights. So it's really critical to get back to a message that people believe in.
Yeah, well, I think it's important too, but I also think policies are important. I think we've been kind of going the wrong avenue.
Right.
In those directions, I think you put in bad policies. And my big one is, people that listen to the show a lot, is really the real estate market. And when you corrupt real estate markets, well, it's hugely corrupting. And part of the thing I always strikes me, and maybe you can do it when you do some of your talks around places, but what I've been doing now is I ask the audience, I say, how many of the audience in here, and so their Republican crowds, own a home? And virtually every time, every person raise their hand, but then they can't make the correlation like, yeah, we're the party of homeowners. And I really think the Republican Party should tag themselves as being the party of private property and limited but necessary government. And somehow I think we've gotten away from that. And so you have Republicans doing really the political work for Democrats in counties such as these. I think you end up with these urban service boundaries. I was joking about that last week. I can't figure out what service that's offered inside the urban service boundary, because I've been looking at houses here. We went through, personally, a tough time during the whole housing downturn. And so we've been renting. I always say we need all these homeowners, and here I am renting. But we've been looking at houses, and within this urban service boundary, they don't have sewer and water, a lot of them. They still have septic systems.
Right.
So I'm thinking, what service are you providing? And I don't really know, but I guess water.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up a great point. But see, to me, the candidate is the vehicle for the distribution of the policies. If you have a great candidate, they're going to deliver those policies. If you have a great candidate.
Well, let me take a little odds. We're running out of time for this segment here, but
sure.
I think you'd take the greatest candidate in the world, put them down in Miami-Dade County, and they're not going to win. I mean, the demographics are just so stacked against them, they're not going to win. And I just think we've kind of stacked our whole electorate that way, that it's shifted way more Democrat, and so it's just tougher for the message, and I think it's all based on policy. But I'm with Joe, and I'm going to goose this up again. Semprevivo.
Perfect.
Okay. Perfect. It just wasn't very smooth. And we'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to News Radio 1490 WTTB and the Steve Meyer Show on Capital and Politics. I have Joseph Semprevivo, and I gave me a little phonics lessons in between the break here, so I appreciate it, Joseph.
Oh, no problem. That was perfect.
Yeah,
you're a linguist now.
I'm going to try it. Semprevivo. I did it the first time, not so good, but I'll have to keep working on it because you're a good guy to know, so I hate to be goofing your name up here. So.
Just call me
Joseph. When we left off the last time, we were kind of talking about political stuff, and I think Joseph and I could really get into the weeds of which candidate's going to do what, where, kind of the dynamics of it, because my whole thing is that it's really about demographics, and the Republican demographics, which I think are homeowners and the married, are shrinking, and the demographics that tend to vote Democrat are the renters, government employees, people really in need of government services, government handouts, and singles, and those groups are all growing. So I just look at the demographics that tend to vote Democrat are getting bigger, and the demographics that tend to vote Republican are getting smaller. And I'm, try not to take this from a racial side of things. I mean, I talk about changeable demographics. They can't do anything about gender, can't do anything about race, can't do anything about age. So I'm just talking about those changeable demographics. And any comment on...
Well, yeah, I think if we, it's a snapshot of history, right? So if we go back in time and look at how the from a demographic standpoint, why they voted the way they did in 1988 versus all the way up until 2012, I think a lot of that goes to the messages. You had a lot of moderates. You had McCain. You had McCain and Dole, and these are obviously not necessarily in order, but you had McCain and Dole and Romney, and that also helps define those demographics and how they're going to vote. I know conservatives did not go to the polls of all different ages when McCain was running. They were absolutely embarrassed of that candidate. He's a moderate. So I think some of that, there can be some conversion from a demographical standpoint if we have the right message and the right vehicle. Is it enough to win? Is it enough to garner those 5 million plus votes? That I don't know. I can't answer that.
Yeah, and demographically, see, I no longer think it's going to be just 5 million. I think we will have lost another 2% margin. There's around 130 million votes cast, so you end up with another 2.6. So we're really going to have to overcome, in my view, 7.5 million votes, not just 5 million anymore, because it's constantly changing. And that's one of my things, too, is you always talk about dynamic scoring and economics policy.
Right.
And I think you really have to dynamic score the elections, too. So I don't know. We'll stay tuned. I hope you're right. I hope message and candidate can do it. But I'm out here, and I'm really pushing this. I'm trying to be a happier warrior, is saying that, we're going to get pounded, but there is a way out of it. Right. And I'm just hoping people are more receptive to my message after the 2016 election. If that makes any sense?
It does, and we do need to get I know we may disagree on this, but you have to get the core out to vote. If you look at Florida, could we have won Florida if we captured every single Republican and drove them to the polls and had them vote in the presidential election? Could we have?
No, I think you could do that. But I think the Democrats, and actually I think the Democrats probably have a better argument, is the people that only Republicans vote. I always say they know when to vote, they know where to vote, they know how to vote, and I always wonder about the Republican voters. They vote, and so they're in every election. I think that's really why we've been doing better in off-year elections, 2010, 2014. But then in president year elections, and the stats on it, at least in the state of Florida, the people that vote all the time, the Republicans have about a 5% edge. In the presidential years, and it's a bunch of people that only vote in presidential years, and the Democrats have about a 6% edge. And again, that's a static scoring. That's not a dynamic scoring, so I don't know how that would change by 2016. So I don't know. I just think it's going to be a little bit of a tough time out there for Republicans in 2016. And then I think in 2018 they're going to do better again because that segment votes. And so, like, the governorship may stay. And the one I really worry about is 2020 because that you have a presidential year coinciding with a redistricting year. And so 2010 was kind of an optimum thing to happen for the Republicans. You had the big Tea Party push. Republicans took over a bunch of state legislatures, then they're in charge of redistricting, and so they can gerrymander the districts, and we're in those states that aren't in perpetual litigation like we are here in Florida now, thanks to that, to the amendment of the Constitution. I talk about that amendment to make these fair districts, and it's just endless litigation, because how do you quantify what's the perfect district and forever litigation.
So I got a question for you. So looking at this, you bring up a really good point. So looking at what happened to the Republican Party and how there's been some reduction of voters and conversion and stuff like that for elections, is that also true for the Democrats this time around? See, if we look back in history, if we look just recent history, you look at Bush. The end of the Bush, we had a lot of people, the Bush era, we had a lot of people that was fatigued with Bush and with politics and with moderate beliefs, and that was not as engaged under Obama versus McCain. They thought McCain was the same or worse than Bush, than W. Bush, Now, is that also going to be the case 8 years of Obama? Because we all hear Democrats and independents saying, I am tired of this type of policy making. I'm tired of this anti-Constitution, this anti-Bill of Rights president. I'm tired of this one-sided president who speaks for Black Lives Matter and Trayvon Martin and Brown and all these individuals, but will not speak against cop killing and killing whites. So there's a lot of anger out there, and this is coming from the Democrat side, not even the Republican side. And Hillary is another dynasty candidate, just like a Bush is. So how is that going to work in our favor this cycle?
Historically, after an 8-year presidency, the other party takes it over. But I always look at it from a very parochial side of things. I always look at Democrats governing ineptly. I always think after LBJ got done, it was, to me, naturally that Nixon would get reelected. But then, he had his troubles, and so then Carter came in, and I think governed ineptly, and then Reagan came in. And then I think Bush would have won soundly in 1992 had Ross Perot not entered the race.
He was the spoiler.
I think he would have won easily. And then Clinton came in, I think was looked at as governing pretty competently. But again, I think people were kind of sick of the Clintons at the end of the 2000s. And Bush, he actually lost the popular vote, but we still ended up carrying an electoral college. And so, I don't know. To me, it's this demographics thing. I think that stuff's important, but once the demographics shift enough, I think it's all over. So, like in California, I think you can put you take your pick of your perfect Republican candidate, and I don't think they can win in California. I don't think they can win in New York. I don't think they can win in Maryland, Delaware. The list goes on and on. Massachusetts. I just don't think it can happen. Your thoughts?
No, I'm an optimist and a realist, and I do believe that a Republican will win in 2016. But to your point, demographics is demographics. And are you going to be able to go to California and convince, millions and millions of individuals that are pro-illegal immigration and law breaking as kind of their mantra? Lawbreakers, are you going to convince them to vote Republican? No, you're not. So, it's the law of numbers. Eventually, there's going to be so many numbers that I don't care what you do, what your message is, you're just not going to get voted for and get elected. So, and that's a real critical issue. But we've done it to ourselves. I mean, number one, we've stayed out of certain markets as if it was taboo to go into those markets to campaign. And that's why my 3 candidates that I really like, they're speaking to minority communities. They're going into the communities that typically Republican candidates never went in. And I'm not talking because it's the election cycle. I'm talking over the last 10 years. They've gone into these markets and they've spoken. So, and I think what you find that we are discounting that population when we shouldn't be. They are very conservative. You go, and I'm not talking government housing. I'm talking, you go into Ferguson and you talk to individuals that live in Ferguson, that own shops in Ferguson. They go to church every Sunday. They are conservative in nature. So is that the majority there? I can't answer that. But demographically speaking, that's a vote that we can capture.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can because they're not property owners. That would be my side of it. They don't own property, and I don't hear. I've been listening to candidates. I haven't heard one of them. We are in free fall in the home ownership rate. We are back to the 1960 levels, 1968. Right. I haven't heard a Republican talk about it, and I really think we're the party of private property. We're the party of homeowners.
Absolutely.
And we're in this free fall in home ownership rate. And I haven't heard one of 17 candidates. You just think randomly it would just somehow pop up someplace. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. So I really don't think there's a serious candidate in this thing just because the demographics have changed so much and they continue to change. I mean,
right.
This isn't done. And now, it was a big housing bubble, right? 2007, 2008, we're back up to those prices. Anybody calling it a bubble? I don't hear it. But it wasn't, in my viewpoint, it really wasn't a bubble. We put in growth restrictions, which created a real shortage of housing, which then is going to drive the price up, and it just prices young people out of the market. So I don't think young people are turning into Republicans.
I do not disagree. I agree with you. I think that homeownership is a very critical part, and it's unaffordable at these rates now. But we saw Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr. all say home ownership for everyone is critical. We need home ownership for everyone. So what do? They regulated home ownership. And they went out there, and the people ran and sprinted and bought homes because they changed the standards. It was a government mandate that home ownership for minorities is top priority, to the point where they regulated banks. You could not get any, from a Fed funds, you could not get any support from the Federal Reserve, from FDIC, if you did not support minority with home ownership. And our bubble popped. We had correction in the real estate market. So I don't think you're going to hear 17 candidates or any of them at this point stand up and say, we have to push for mass home ownership now.
Well, no, I know, and that's why I think we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I just don't think there is no other option from my standpoint. People want there to be, but I just don't think there is. And the whole portion of that is it really hurt. A lot of the stuff I've been reading lately is who really got hurt in the downturn were a lot of middle-class blacks bought their first house and just got hammered, and now they're back in that renting segment, which I think is just really tough to capture. So I've been with Joseph Semprevivo, and we'll be back after a short break. This is the Steve Meyer Show on Capitalism and Politics. Welcome back to News Radio 1490 WTTB and the Steve Meyer Show on Capitalism and Politics. And again, to contact me or to download past shows, please go to the WTTBAM.com website, and please let others know about the show. And again, I have Joseph Semprevivo here with me today, and I appreciate you coming in, Joseph. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy.
Thanks for having me.
And I hope maybe we can do this some more. I think you're an interesting guy because you've been a lot of places, know a lot of people, been very active in politics, so I really kind of enjoying this.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. I appreciate it.
And then I did want to give you a little push for your business, because as long as you're in business, I'm assuming you're helping everybody out here, so I think that's good. Where can we get your cookies?
Oh, sure. Our sugar-free cookies are available at Dollar General, Dollar Tree, nationally, and also all the Walmarts on the Treasure Coast. So, yeah, we've been doing this now for 27 years. And are you staying above the fierce competition out there? We are. We believe in making a superior quality product. But what's really cool about our product? It sells for $1 retail. And that's because we're a debt-free company. So all of our savings gets passed right on to our customers. And our ingredients are all natural. You don't have to have a PhD in chemistry to understand what's in our products. And people want that. They want simple ingredients. They want it great tasting. And they don't want to spend a lot of money because they're a diabetic or a health-conscious customer. They don't want to be overcharged.
And that's how you got started with it being health-conscious. But is there a market? You're going well outside the bounds of the health food, right?
Yeah, we are. We're finding that parents are buying the cookies for their kids. We started years ago. At 12 years old, I invented a sugar-free ice cream because I was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 9. So at 12, I invented a sugar-free ice cream, sold it with my dad. I didn't even have a driver's license. We were driving in a little van, distributing it to 197 stores a week.
And this is type 1 diabetes.
And this is type 1. I'm insulin dependent, absolutely. I did that for 3 years until I was 15, and I told my parents, would you make a sugar-free cookie? They don't melt, and I could take them to school with me. So my mom and dad invented a sugar-free cookie, and I fell in love with it. I said, look, this is selfish of me to have this cookie to myself. I want to share it with other diabetics just like me. We put it in a bag, went to the 197 stores that we were selling ice cream to, discontinued the ice cream, started selling Joseph sugar-free cookies. It's now 27 years later. We're making about 12 million cookies a day. And we're in Dollar General, Dollar Tree, and Walmart and Treasure Coast.
Yeah, great. I think it's just a great story. I appreciate the whole thing. And your book, still doing well?
It is. Madness, Miracle Millions. My dad and I wrote it together, and with my mom nudging us to do so. And we just won our 10th award 2 days ago. We won another gold. So that's reader's favorite.
What does that mean?
That was a book selected against thousands of other books. It's called Reader's Favorite Award. And it's a very coveted award. Woody Allen competed, Jim Carrey, David Baldacci, all these famous authors competed, and we were fortunate enough we got a gold medal and for nonfiction motivational. It's our book, Madness, Miracle Millions, is a motivational, inspirational book.
Yeah, no, I read it. It was great. I gave it to my wife. She read it, thought it was great. I think it's just a great message. The whole thing's, but I think it's a real American message, right? It's you pick yourself up by your bootstraps and away you go, and every family faces trouble, and you guys maybe more than your fair share, and come out smelling like a rose at the end. I think it's great. So. And how about I always wonder if the millions was dollars at the end of the thing, or was it millions of cookies at the end of the...
Yeah. It's certainly millions, that's for sure. Yeah, it's both. Yeah.
Well, good. We can always hit you up to see if you want to advertise on the Steve Meyer Show on Capital Politics. I'm just teasing you anyhow. And you will have your book out at the All-American Rally. I should plug this too, Saturday, September 26th, 2 to 6 out at the fairgrounds. And you'll be there with your book?
Absolutely. I'll be there with a book and my cookies.
How about your mom and dad?
And my mom and dad will be there as well.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely.
I met them you're at the Republican Club of Indian River and were kind enough to speak there, and you brought your whole entourage, which were people that were your mom and dad. I thought that was really nice.
Oh, yeah, they go everywhere with me. Yeah, and I'll also be at Barnes & Noble on Saturday the 12th of September on US 1 in Jensen Beach, doing a book signing and a speech with my mom and my dad.
Okay, and is that downtown Jensen Beach? Is there a downtown Jensen Beach?
It's at Barnes & Noble. Yeah, it's at the Barnes & Noble. I think it's on. They only have one in Jensen Beach. I think it's on US 1.
Okay, good enough. Jesse, any feedback on
it? It is on US 1, yeah.
And how far south? Is it what intersection? Do you know what the cross intersection would be?
I think it's just north of Jensen Beach Boulevard on US 1.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
You live there?
I live in Port St. Lucie, so very near.
You should come by and see me.
I'll check it out, yeah. When is that again?
That is September the 12th at 3:50 p.m., 3:50 to 4:20. I'll be there. We'll give a little talk, question and answers, do a book signing.
Great, next Saturday.
Yeah,
all right.
Next Saturday.
And then also just talking to you in between one of these breaks, you talked about doing book signings with Nancy Reagan. That sounded like, one of the Reagans, I think of people of my era anyhow. I came of age when Reagan was first getting elected or whatever, and I just thought he was a great guy. And I never really knew that much about Nancy, and you want to share a little bit of your experience with Nancy?
Yeah, I would love to. Let me give a little backstory to this. So what happened was it was my 25th birthday, and my mom and my dad gave me a little gift from the Reagan gift shop that they ordered through a catalog, right? And the gift came in, and they sent me the wrong thing. They sent an autographed gift instead of just a regular, $19 gift or whatever it was. So I called the gift shop, and I said, "Excuse me, you made a mistake. You sent me an autograph from the president, and it wasn't supposed to be." And her name was Carolyn Menti, and she was the gift store manager. She goes, "Boy, you're so honest. Why don't you go ahead and keep it?" And we just started talking and kind of created a kinship. And she said that there was a position open in the office in Century City that worked for President Reagan. I was in college at the time, so I applied.
Now, can I back
sure.
to get a little clarity to this? Now, there's like a Reagan library, right?
Yes.
And that's not associated with this at all, other than Reagan's involved with it.
Right. So the Reagan Library is where the president hosts all of his memorabilia from Reagan office.
And that's in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, that's in Simi Valley, California.
Okay. Thank you.
And then in Century City is the actual physical office of the president, and he would go to work every day, Monday through Friday, post-presidency. Yep. And he'd have a couple staffers in there, and I was lucky to be one. I was an intern for President Reagan.
Thank you for that. So now I got that.
So I applied for the job, and I was flying back and forth to California to do the interviews, and I wound up getting the job. Long story short, I moved to California, and I was working at the office with President Reagan every day, and then to fill in my extra time, I was working at the foundation, which is attached to the library. It's on upstairs of the library, and that's where they try to do fundraising and everything else to keep President Reagan's legacy alive. So Mrs. Reagan would come in on Saturdays and do book signings. She set up a little table, and she would sit there, and it would be like once a month or once every 8 weeks or whatever, and she would sit there and she would sign. And I noticed I was right next to her all day from the minute she got there until the minute she left. I'd walk her to her car, everything else. I would hand her the books that the customers, President Reagan's constituents, former constituents, would buy these books, and I would hand them to Mrs. Reagan so she could sign her name to these books. We would be there for 12 to 15 hours. She would never get up, never take a bathroom break, and I stood next to her. So one night, after we were done, we went up to, they had like a mock Oval Office in the foundation, on the foundation floor. Mrs. Reagan and I went up there, and she was, breaking apart her sandwich to eat half of her sandwich, and she said to me, here, Joseph, you need to eat, my sandwich. I said, oh, no, Mrs. Reagan, I can't eat that sandwich. And she said, look, you stood next to me all day, and you didn't leave once. I said, well, Mrs. Reagan, neither did you. You sat there for 15 hours. And she says, look, this is my tuna sandwich. You're going to eat half. And I said, I just can't do that. She goes, are you telling the First Lady no? I said, no, Mrs. Reagan, I'm not. So she hands me a half a tuna sandwich, and we ate that. I ate my half, she ate hers, and we talked. And, Mrs. Reagan had a very, everybody in the media during the 80s, oh, what a controlling person she was. She was very protective of the president. The one thing is, the latter part is true. She was very protective of the president because people all try to advance themselves at the expense of the president and at the expense of everybody else around them. And she would not allow that. But the one thing that was never told about Mrs. Reagan was she had a heart of gold, and she was just such a sweet, sweet lady. And I got to see that time and time and time again. A beautiful, wonderful, sweet lady.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that. The Reagans were one of my favorites, especially Ronald. And you never knew it because she got so much bad press. So
yeah.
That's nice to hear. I think that's a great story. I think you'll be telling that the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. That is great. And so how long did you work in that capacity? This is a year or something?
Yeah, it was a 1 year internship, and the day I got it, they called me on a Friday and said I had to start work on a Monday. I packed up my Honda Accord and drove to Century City, didn't have a place to live, and I called the office and said, on my way there, hey, look, it's kind of funny because the cell phones then looked like those giant VCRs, huge antennas. So I called and they said, we'll get you set up with a place, and, you just have to pay for it. So I took a hiatus from work, and it was going to be, I was in school full time, 4.0 student, and I was in working at Joseph's, cookies. And I said, I can't take off that long. Can I do this for 3 to 4 months? And they said, yeah, okay, that's fine. So I worked there for 4 months. But there's a very interesting story on my first day of work. I heard about the president showing up to work every day, and I just didn't believe it. So I'm sitting there at the desk, and my desk is separated by a boardroom, and then next to that boardroom, there's a doorway that goes right into the president's office, and it's kept open. So I could walk from my office directly into President Reagan's office. So I'm sitting at my desk, and I see all these people, hustle and bustle right through the door, about 10, 12 people. And they all make a left, and here's this giant man standing there, and he looks at me, and he walks right up to me, and I stand up. It's the President of the United States, former President Reagan. I start to cry because I have chills from head to toe, and I start to cry. He extends his hand to me and says, hi, I'm Ronnie. You must be Joseph. Knowing as a little tiny intern, he knew that I was starting that day in the office. And he goes, look, you have to have my back, he says to me. It's just you and me, kid, against everybody else. There's a whole office full of ladies, and it was just President Reagan and myself. So it was just a really great thing. I loved it.
That's a great story. And I like the way you tell it. Everything's great. And we're with Joseph Semprevivo, and most known for Joseph's Light Cookies, but also for his little political connections now. I appreciate you coming in here. So let's end this segment, and we'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to News Radio 1490 WTTB and the Steve Meyer Show on Capital Politics. And in studio today we have Joseph Semprevivo, and I really enjoyed you coming in here and talking about this stuff. If I forget it at the end, I always do that. We're talking about something, and then my guest is over with, and I'm like, oh, I didn't thank him and stuff. So I thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it.
And I have to tell my listeners out there, I did hit Joseph up where I had him sit and listen. As part of being on the show, the cost was having to listen to my presentation. Which I've made it all over the county, and I don't know of anybody that agrees with me, but I'm hoping after 2016 we'll maybe get a little bit of backing, but I appreciate you again doing this. So when we left off, I love your Reagan stories. Did you have any more stories with Ronald at all, or was he pretty healthy when you were?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because when I applied for the job, I really expected him to be kind of sitting in a corner at home, drooling over himself, because it was kind of ironic. Right before I left, there was an article, I think it was like the USA Today or something like that, saying president in the corner of his room drooling over himself, non-functioning. I went into the office, and it was so untrue. He was there every day, Monday through Friday. One of the great things. There was another story. I have so many stories. But every day he would come into my office and we would talk every single day. And I would go in. I'd bring him his lunch. He had pushed it in. A little roll cart was delivered. He was on a high protein diet. So I'd push it into his office. We'd talk. He had a big fish tank in there. We'd talk about his fish. But one day, he said, "Come here, I want to show you something." So we walked. His office was on the 34th floor on this in this building, and it overlooked L.A., right? It was in Century City, which is around Beverly Hills, right? It's a real famous area. So we walk across this floor. It's probably 15,000 square foot office. Secret Service house is a quarter of that. And so we go up to the window, and he goes, "I want to show you something." He goes, "Don't ever repeat this to anybody ever again, ever." I said, "Okay, Mr. President." He goes, "You see down there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, do you know what that is?" I said, "Yeah, it's a golf course." He goes, "Well, that's the L.A. golf course, and I can tell you when that was built." He goes, "Because I watched it get built." And then he leans over, like if there's a group of people listening, he goes, "That will tell everyone my age, so hush." And it was just so cute. And he just did things like that all the time. And he winked at me when he said it, so he was just so playful and happy and just a really great guy. Just So
who was more conservative between the two of you? Did you ever talk policy? Did you ever get into policy stuff?
I was really surprised because I studied Reagan law. I mean, we all did. Anybody who loves, presidents, and I love the office of presidency, especially, our founding fathers. And Reagan is one of those closest ones to that office. I didn't agree with everything that he did, but we did, he did say one day that his biggest mistake was voting for immigration reform. He was very disappointed in the outcome because it was promised. He said everybody should have a chance to come to America and make it. He said, "Look at me. I'm a product of immigration, and immigration is a beautiful thing for our country. We have great inventors and great contributors to our society and to our economy. It is a beautiful thing to have in our country." He said, "But we got lost along the way. When people come to our country and we start giving them handouts with means-tested stuff, we start handing them welfare and start handing them this, they lose their drive. They lose their focus. They lose the American dream." And he said, "And what I did with how I voted, with what was promised to me, I feel like I helped contribute to those individuals that lost their dream." And I said, "So what would you do again?" So I would make sure that we were protected first. The funding would be apportioned and would be put to work immediately before anybody got amnesty. So I thought that was a very interesting point. But he was certainly a constitutionalist. He believes in the First Amendment. He believes in our Bill of Rights, Second Amendment, and so he was a fantastic, fantastic man.
Yeah, no, I thought Reagan still in his speeches. I always loved his speeches. I mean, they're just works of art. I thought he was really good at it. And,
yeah.
I don't know. I really like him, and so I'm feeling lucky to talk to you because you knew him even.
Yeah, the Brandenburg, General Secretary Gorbachev, come to this gate, open this gate, tear down this wall, right? So that was all Reagan's words, 100% of it, and his speechwriters were livid that he changed it.
Well, it was famous, right? He was in Iceland or something.
Yeah.
Going here.
Yeah, he was. I used to see all of his speeches, and they were all crossed out from the speechwriters, and he hand wrote on them. And he would take them up to the podium, handwritten, not even retyped. And he would do it at the last minute. So
are those framed and stuff?
No, they actually had them in big binders. And And one day they asked me to source something, to go look up something, and I grabbed these binders and I opened them up, and it's all these speeches from the president and crossed off, handwritten, and he would sign it, RR, by each of the changes. So I said, what? I said to the at the time the chief of staff, I said, what the heck are these doing here? They said, well, we're sending them to archives, so we have them now, and we're going to send them all to archives. So and that goes to the library. Underneath the library is this giant archival place. I've been in there; it's huge, and they just have a whole bunch of historians down there with white gloves, literally dealing with all this stuff. It's kind of really cool.
Yeah, that is great stuff. I appreciate you sharing it with us. You're kind of in a unique spot. I think that's just remarkable. So I don't know. I appreciate it. Well, anything else you want to talk about political-wise, book-wise, cookie-wise?
Well, I mean, we already discussed that they're in Dollar General and Dollar Tree, and the book's available online and stuff. But looking at politics, who do you think really pulls this off in the election in 2016? The primary.
I don't know. On the Republican side of things, I really don't know, and I'm really not even that involved because of my whole mindset. We're losing. I'm thinking, how do we pick up the pieces and run in 2020? Because I think 2020 is a huge election because you end up with the election coincides with redistricting, and the Democrats have a big advantage in the number of voters that come out and vote in presidential elections. So 2020 to me is just a huge, huge election. I'm not saying 2016 isn't, but I already think it's over.
Do you think Hillary pulls the primary? Or do you think Joe Biden?
I think whoever the Democrat is. My personal thing is the Democrats are marketing the Republicans of old white people. I really think there's going to be somebody comes in who's the senator from New Jersey or the head of HUD. I can't think of why I can't think of either names. Or the Castro.
Menendez or something like that?
Castro is the guy from HUD. He was the mayor of San Antonio. He's got a twin brother. I think it's going to be a minority candidate, or that's what I'd be doing if I was a Democrat. And the other one would be the senator, and why can't I think of his name from
Menendez
New Jersey?
Or
no, that's the one that was in all the trouble.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I won't think of it now, but it'll come to me at 12 o'clock tonight or something. But that's what I think is going to happen.
I think Joe Biden announces, and Joe Biden wins the primary. Now, to me, the dark horse would have been Michelle Obama. If they would put in Michelle Obama, I think the Republicans lose the race.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never even thought of that one. But I think it could be, going to the convention, you don't know what's going to happen. I say Biden does get in there, Hillary's not going to go away. So, comes in and you have a contested convention, who knows what's going to come out of there. And I really think, there's just been this push of the Republicans are the party of old white people, and so what do you have running for the Democrat nomination? A bunch of old white people.
well, if you look at it, and that's the Democratic Party right now. It's the party of the old white people also. They try to brand, Democrats are brilliant at branding the Republican Party as old, rich, white. And then you look at Donald Trump, and it fits that whole definition of the Republican Party. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of Carly Fiorina. There's some really fantastic candidates. I like 3 out of the 17. But this is one race, and my 3 is Cruz, not in order, Cruz, Paul, and Perry. They're my 3, because they're all proven. Perry, 12th largest economy in the world. He turned the state around and grew it like crazy. He believes in the Bill of Rights. Then you got, Cruz for obvious reasons. He's a constitutionalist. And you have Rand Paul, who's a business owner, as well as, he understands the Senate and everything else. And he stands on his principles. He doesn't waver. But now I'm not talking about electability. I'm talking about they're my 3 candidates. The interesting thing here, though, is when you look at the 17, we could actually go to Super Tuesday, get out of Super Tuesday in March for the primary, and not have a designated winner in the primary. We can go to June. If you look at this race mathematically, and I know, Steve, you love mathematics. If you look at this mathematically, if you apportion to each candidate their home state, you got 17 candidates. You have a couple overlapping, like Bush and Rubio, and you have in Texas Cruz as well as Perry. You could have a Huckabee actually win if you look at it mathematically. So it's going to be very interesting. This is going to be a race of money. Who has enough money to get to March. You're going to lose about 3 to 5 candidates by December 31st. That's what you're going to lose. We'll be down to 12.
Yeah, I just, it's one of my other pet peeves here, and I don't know if I can find it, but they have, one of my knocks on the whole Republican nomination process is that the states that were carried by the Democrats and the territories are going to send more delegates to the convention than the states that voted for the Republicans. So we're going to end up with the Massachusetts and the New Yorkers and the Californias picking our candidate, which I just think is crazy, but that's how it is. You have a lot more pull than our people, you know. I just think it really should be set up differently. I mean, there are states, California will send the most delegates to the Republican convention, and I don't think a Republican can win in California. So why are they picking our nominee? I don't understand it.
Well, I don't think it really matters. I mean, you know, historically, how many upsets have there been at the convention?
I don't know. I mean, never, right? I mean, it doesn't happen.
So it works. I mean, right? I mean, because if your state ultimately wins.
Well, it used to work. See, that's where I'm at. We're not in the static part anymore. I just think we're going to have a terrible time in 2016, and and just because of demographics, I have nothing against Republicans and the Republican Party is really two parties. I mean, I heard a big Democrat who lived in Denver for a while, and he says there's really 3 political parties. There's the Democrats, there's the moderate Republicans, and there are conservative Republicans. And somehow that's worked out for the Republicans. The conservative and the moderate's a big enough pool where if some stayed home, we'd still win, and that can't happen anymore. So that's why I think it's one of the reasons we're in trouble. We nominate a moderate, we're going to lose some conservative voters. We nominate conservative, we're going to lose some moderate voters. So I think we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We only have a little less than maybe around 30 seconds here. Anything else? Words of wisdom? I don't know. Again, I thank you for coming in. Hope everybody has a wonderful Labor Day. What are you up to? Anything fun?
I'll be traveling to North Carolina and Tennessee, going to Family Dollar and Dollar General and for meetings. So.
And did you marry a wonderful woman here?
Oh, the love of my life, my best friend. We have 5 babies under the age of 8 years old.
Well, that keeps people busy. So,
yeah.
Well, thanks again, Joseph. Appreciate you coming in. This is Steve Meyer Show on Capital and Politics, and join me again next week as we work to improve the Republic.